gather here not to hear mere knowledge, but to be touched by something that is older than knowledge itself, something that breathes beneath the words, a current that belongs not to the surface of your thoughts, but to the depths of your being. For tonight I will speak of a truth that sounds deceptively simple, yet carries the weight of the entire structure of the psyche. To see a person's true character, you must pay attention to just two things. I do not give this as a rule to be memorized, nor as a clever trick to outwit your neighbor, but as a portal into the mystery of the soul, for these two things reveal the mask and the man, the appearance and the essence, the persona that dazzles and the shadow that betrays. What are these two things? You may be tempted to imagine. I will name them quickly, but to do so would rob them of their depth. To recognize them, you must first be willing to see how easily we are deceived by words, how swiftly we fall in love with appearances, how unconsciously we bow before the persona that others present. Every person you meet carries a mask. That mask is not false, it has its function, it protects, it allows the individual to survive the collective, it smooths over the raw edges of instinct and presents something acceptable to the world. But if you mistake the mask for the person, you will live your life among phantoms. You will marry a mask. You will befriend a mask. You will hate a mask. And when it slips, you will feel betrayed. Yet the betrayal is not theirs alone. It is also yours. For you were content to see only the painted surface of the vessel, never the wine within. The psyche is a house with many rooms. Some are lit, furnished, and open to guests. Others are locked, dusty, and inhabited by shadows that whisper. We like to linger in the well-lit rooms and to keep our conversations there. But if you truly wish to know a person, you must notice not only how they decorate the parlor, but also how they treat the hidden chambers. And this is where the first of the two things reveals itself. Observe how a person treats those who cannot repay them, those who are powerless, those who do not glitter with prestige or threaten with power. In this mirror, their mask slips. Here the unconscious is revealed, because the persona has no need to impress where there is no audience, and the shadow is free to act. If a person speaks softly to kings but harshly to beggars, you have seen their true character more clearly than in 1,000 eloquent speeches. If someone displays warmth only when observed, but cruelty when unseen, you have touched the underbelly of their psyche. To study how one treats the weak is to look directly into the furnace where complexes burn and archetypes cry out. The second of these revelations lies not in how a person treats others, but in how they suffer, for character is not revealed in moments of triumph when the ego is bathed in applause, but in the dark night when meaning collapses and the soul is stripped bare. How does the individual carry the burden of failure, of grief, of despair? Does he rage against fate like a child denied his toy? Does she turn her pain outward, inflicting it upon others to relieve her own? Or do they descend into the wound, discovering within it not only bitterness but a secret teacher? A person's response to suffering unveils the very architecture of their soul. Here one sees whether the ego has allied with the self or whether it remains enslaved to its childish illusions. These two things, treatment of the powerless and relationship to suffering, are like torches illuminating the hidden corridors of the psyche. With them, you can see beyond persona and shadow, beyond the glittering mask and into the raw material of the soul. But to truly grasp them, you must understand the symbolic depths that underlie them. For what is the powerless other but the projection of your own inner child, your own repressed and wounded fragment that still cries out to be seen? And what is suffering but the crucible through which the self calls you toward individuation? Consider a dream. You are in a vast city of mirrors, and everywhere you turn you see reflections, yourself smiling, yourself dressed in robes, yourself adored. But suddenly one mirror cracks, and behind it stands a child clothed in rags, weeping silently. You may wish to turn away, for the child is unpleasant to behold, yet until you embrace that child, your true character is unknown even to yourself. In this dream lies the secret. How you treat the powerless outer figure reveals how you treat the powerless inner figure. If you scorn the beggar, it is because you scorn the beggar in your own soul. If you exploit the weak, it is because you exploit your own innocence, sacrificing it upon the altar of ambition. Thus, every interaction with another is also a revelation of your relationship with your inner world. And suffering, how strange that we fear it, resist it, and yet it comes like a dark angel to shape us. When misfortune enters your life, you stand at a crossroads. You may either become bitter, narrowing your soul, or you may become profound, expanding it. I have seen patients who, after a single wound, became rigid and cruel, unable to forgive, unable to grow. And I have seen others who, through suffering, became vessels of compassion, able to bear the pain of others because they had borne their own. Here lies the test of character. Suffering burns away illusions, but whether you emerge as ash or as gold depends on the orientation of your soul toward the self. So when I tell you to observe these two things, do not imagine you are learning a quick formula for judging others. You are learning a discipline of perception, a way of seeing into the archetypal drama playing out in every soul. You are learning to see beyond the veil of appearances, into the myth each person is unconsciously enacting. You are learning to recognize the shadow where it lives, not in words, but in deeds toward the powerless, not in theories, but in reactions to fate. And you are learning, above all, to turn these torches inward, for it is not enough to diagnose your neighbor. You must diagnose yourself. How do you treat the weak within you? How do you treat the suffering that knocks upon your door? Your answers to these questions are your true character. Though your ego may prefer to look elsewhere, the unconscious is a strange and merciless teacher. It does not care for the beautiful speeches you recite. It cares for how you live when no one applauds. It does not measure you by your ambitions, but by your capacity to endure the cross of life without surrendering to despair. This is why I say that these two things are enough to know a soul. They are simple, but simplicity is often the mask of depth, and yet I know you will resist this truth, for the ego prefers to hide in complexity, to cover itself with excuses. You will say, but surely there are many measures of character intelligence, creativity, charm, morality. Yes, these things exist, but they can be borrowed, imitated, or feigned. A clever man can act intelligent, a charming man can act moral, but when he is confronted with the powerless, or when he suffers, the play ends, the mask crumbles, the archetypes emerge, the self demands to be seen, and then the truth arrives, naked and undeniable. You may already be recalling faces, gestures, moments when someone you thought noble revealed their cruelty in a single sentence to a servant, or when someone you thought weak revealed their nobility in the way they endured a tragedy. These memories stir within you, not as accidents, but as awakenings. They are the unconscious whispering, look here, this is the truth of character. Do not forget, for the psyche is always teaching, if you have eyes to see. But I tell you also, be careful, for to see another's character is to take responsibility for your response. When you recognize cruelty, will you continue to be enchanted by the mask, or will you adjust your steps accordingly? When you recognize nobility in suffering, will you honor it, or will you ignore it? To see is not enough. One must also act, and sometimes the action required is inward, to confront your own shadow, reflected in the mirror of the other. The archetypes weave their dramas ceaselessly. The weak stand before you as emissaries of your own innocence, your own anima, your own wounded child. The suffering that strikes you is the visitation of the self, cloaked as misfortune. To meet these figures with cruelty or with despair is to betray your own individuation. To meet them with reverence and courage is to step into the mystery of wholeness. This is a secret I give you tonight, and though it may sound simple, it will demand your whole life to practice it. You must understand that when I speak of character, I do not speak of a superficial trait, but of the living essence of the soul in relation to life. For the soul is not static. It breathes, it shifts, it grows, and sometimes it withers. To know the character of another or of yourself is to peer into this living process. The mask can charm you with words, but the mask cannot hold against the relentless pressure of life. It will crack in front of the powerless, and it will melt in the fire of suffering. That is why I tell you these two measures are enough, because they are thresholds where the unconscious asserts itself, where the archetypes press forward, where the veneer cannot withstand the weight of the real. Think of how a dream operates. In your waking life, you maintain your persona orderly, respectable, perhaps even admirable, but in the dream, the unconscious is free to stage its play. There you may be chased by beasts, humiliated before strangers, seduced by forbidden figures, or struck with unbearable grief, and when you awaken, you are tempted to dismiss the dream as nonsense. But it is the same with life's encounters and sufferings. They are dreams, acted out in daylight. How you treat the powerless is the dream showing you your own shadow. How you endure suffering is the dream showing you your relationship to fate and to the self. It is not mere coincidence. It is the psyche unfolding its drama upon the stage of the world. Do not think that cruelty to the powerless is a minor fault. It is a revelation of the deepest split within a person. The powerless awaken in us, the archetype of the orphaned child, the abandoned fragment of psyche that each of us carries. To scorn the powerless is to reenact the rejection of one's own inner child. To strike them is to strike the wounded one within. When you see someone act in this way, you witness a man at war with himself. He may appear mighty, but his might is brittle. He may appear successful, but he's haunted by the rejected pieces of his own soul. And sooner or later, those pieces will come back, for the psyche demands wholeness. They will return in dreams, in neuroses, in inexplicable despair. No man can banish his own child forever. And when you observe someone in suffering, you are seeing their myth brought to life. Everyone imagines themselves noble until the storm comes. Everyone imagines themselves courageous until the night falls. But when the blow strikes, when loss or failure or death touches them, their character speaks. Some collapse into bitterness, others into denial, and a rare few into transformation. Here the archetype of the wounded healer emerges. Only those who have suffered and descended into their own darkness can carry the light for others. This is why the figure of Christ, the figure of Dionysus torn to pieces, the figure of Osiris slain and resurrected, stand at the center of myth. Suffering is the initiation rite of the soul. If you cannot bear it, you remain an adolescent in spirit, forever fleeing your own depths. But if you can endure it with open eyes, you are reborn as one who carries wisdom not from books, but from wounds. I tell you, then, that the powerless and suffering are not incidental tests of character. They are the very doors through which the self knocks upon the ego. They are the moments when the inner world becomes visible in the outer. They are revelations. But how many are willing to see? How many prefer the comfort of the persona, the illusion that what is said in public is the truth of the soul? To see truly requires courage, for once you have seen, you cannot unsee. You cannot pretend that the charming man who spits upon the weak is noble. You cannot pretend that the pious woman who collapses into hatred when tragedy strikes is holy. And you cannot pretend, above all, that your own treatment of the powerless and your own response to suffering do not matter. They matter because they reveal you. The unconscious whispers constantly. When you mistreat the powerless, the whisper becomes a wound in your own dreams. When you collapse in suffering, the whisper becomes a shadow over your waking life. And yet, when you honor the powerless, when you endure suffering with dignity, the unconscious whispers differently. It whispers of integration, of individuation, of wholeness. For individuation is not an abstract concept. It is not a lecture, nor a philosophy. It is a lived process, and its signs are always visible in the way you act toward others and the way you face the trials of fate. Let me tell you of a patient, a man of status, admired in his community. He gave generously to charities, spoke eloquently of justice, but at home he raged at his servants, belittled his children, and dismissed his wife's feelings. To the public, he was a model of virtue, but the unconscious does not measure virtue by words. It measures by how you treat the powerless in your reach. This man was tormented by dreams of a child locked in a cellar, crying but never hurt. He did not know that the child was himself, abandoned long ago by his own parents, and now abandoned again by his refusal to see the powerless around him. His virtue was a mask, but his cruelty was the truth of his shadow. To heal, he had to face that child within, to embrace the one he despised, to see the powerless, not as threats to his ego, but as mirrors of his forgotten innocence. And another, a woman who lost her child in sudden tragedy. She could have turned bitter, could have cursed life, could have rejected love forever. But in her grief she descended into silence, into prayer, into a long winter of the soul. When she returned, she was no longer the same. She became a source of strength to others who suffered. Because she knew the terrain, she carried scars, yes, but those scars radiated a strange beauty, the beauty of someone who has walked through hell and come back with light in her hands. Her character was not defined by her triumphs, but by her suffering, and in suffering, she touched the archetype of the wounded healer, the Christ image, the one who heals not because he is unbroken, but because he has been broken and yet lives. These are not tales of others alone. They are mirrors for you. Ask yourself, how do you treat the weak? How do you face suffering? Your answers are your true face, and if you do not like the face you see, then you must begin the work not of hiding it better, but of transforming it. This is the path of individuation, to make conscious the unconscious, to integrate the shadow, to embrace the wounded child, to discover in suffering not punishment, but initiation. Only then can you be whole, only then can you live not as a mask, but as a soul. Remember always, the powerless in suffering are archetypes, messengers of the self. They come in outer form, yes, but their true power is inner. To despise them is to despise yourself. To endure them is to awaken yourself. And this is why, though I speak of only two things, they are inexhaustible. To study them is to study the whole human mystery. To practice them is to live the path of individuation. When you reflect on these matters, you will begin to see that the soul is not only tested but disclosed by the simplest of circumstances. We search for profound revelations, for visions, for mystical experiences, but the unconscious speaks most loudly in the ordinary. It speaks in the tone of your voice to the waiter who delays your meal, in the way you regard the child who interrupts your work, in the patience or impatience with which you answer the call of one who cannot offer you advantage. These are not trivial details. They are sacraments. They are moments where the inner and outer worlds kiss, where the unconscious lays bare the state of your soul. To overlook them is to overlook your own initiation. Think of the myths that have traveled across centuries. Kings are not tested on the throne. They are tested in disguise. When the gods visit in the form of beggars, the stories of Zeus and Hermes entering the village disguised as travelers, or Christ appearing as the hungry and imprisoned, reveal a truth as old as myth itself. The divine often appears in weakness, and those who scorn the weak scorn the divine. This is not mere morality, it is the structure of the psyche. For the self, the archetype of wholeness does not come dressed in pomp. It comes as the forgotten, the unwanted, the marginalized. When you reject these, you reject the self. When you honor them, you draw closer to the center of your being. The same is true of suffering. Every myth of initiation is a myth of descent. Orpheus must descend into Hades, Christ into the tomb. Osiris into dismemberment, the shaman into illness and madness. Suffering is not an accident. It is the archetypal descent that every soul must face. If you meet it with denial, you remain a surface creature, fragile and shallow. If you meet it with rage, you poison yourself and others. But if you descend into it consciously, if you allow yourself to be shattered, then you may emerge with a wisdom that no book, no teacher, no theory can grant. You become, in the words of the alchemists, transformed lead into gold. The crucible of suffering reveals the true character because it reveals whether the ego will cling to its illusions or surrender to the self. But let me warn you, the ego is clever. It can imitate kindness toward the powerless when eyes are watching. It can feign dignity in suffering while secretly resenting fate. This is why discernment is necessary. To see a person's character is not to listen to their words, but to observe the small, unguarded moments. The way their face changes when they think no one notices. The way they hold silence when misfortune strikes. These small signs are cracks in the mask, glimpses into the unconscious, revelations of the archetypal play beneath the surface. And it is in these glimpses that truth appears. I have seen men who spoke endlessly of compassion, but who struck terror into those dependent on them. And I have seen men of few words who carried a quiet nobility, revealed only in how they endured hardship without complaint. The unconscious does not flatter, it exposes, and you, if you wish to live truly, must not avert your gaze. You must learn to see without illusion, to let the masks fall, to face both the darkness and the light that dwell in every soul. Consider your own dreams again. When suffering appears in a dream, it is often in the form of death, of wounds, of loss. The dream does not mean you are cursed. It means your unconscious is teaching you how to descend. The dream insists that you face what you fear, that you integrate what you reject, that you accept the inevitability of loss. And when powerless figures appear in dreams, orphans, beggars, crippled animals, they are emissaries of your own rejected aspects, asking to be embraced. To scorn them is to deepen your neurosis. To embrace them is to open the path to individuation. This is why I say again, observe these two things in waking life, for they are the dream made flesh. How you treat the powerless is how you treat your own soul. How you respond to suffering is how you walk the path of transformation. You may ask, then, what does it mean to truly honor the powerless? It does not mean sentimental pity. It does not mean condescending charity. It means to see them as reflections of your own soul, to meet them with the dignity you wish for yourself. It means to recognize that in every beggar lives a God in disguise. In every child lives the seed of eternity. In every broken figure lives a fragment of your own unconscious crying to be integrated. When you respond with reverence rather than contempt, you not only heal them, but yourself. For the psyche is one, what is done to the other is done to you. And how should you meet suffering? Not with despair, nor with denial, but with a deep listening. You must listen to the voice of pain, for it carries messages from the self. It tells you where you are still bound by illusions, where you are still clinging to egoic desires, where you have not yet surrendered to the deeper flow of life. Suffering teaches humility. And humility opens the door to transformation. Those who refuse suffering remain prisoners of their own pride, forever fleeing what cannot be escaped. Those who embrace suffering enter the mystery of renewal. They discover that even in the darkest night, the star is born, and that beyond the grave of their illusions lies the birth of the self. So I tell you, these two revelations, the powerless and suffering, are not peripheral tests. They are the essence of the soul's journey. They are the crossroads at which you reveal who you are, not to others, but to yourself and to the self that calls you. And though they may seem simple, they are inexhaustible. Every day offers you countless opportunities to treat someone powerless with dignity or with contempt. Every season of life offers you opportunities to meet suffering with despair or with transformation. These choices are the alchemy of character. They shape you more deeply than all your achievements, more truly than all your masks. They make you what you are. And so we arrive at the final movement of this reflection, and I ask you not merely to listen, but to feel. For the truths of the soul are not grasped by intellect alone. They must be absorbed, allowed to echo within you like the low hum of a great bell. When I tell you to watch how someone treats the powerless and how they face suffering, I am giving you not only a lens for others, but a mirror for yourself. It is easy, dangerously easy, to use this knowledge to judge those around you, to measure them, to expose them. But the deeper task, the more terrifying and fruitful task, is to turn it upon your own soul. For your character is not a thing you wear like a garment. It is the way your soul dances with the eternal forces that surround you. Ask yourself now, without fear, how have you treated the powerless who cross your path? Do you greet them with irritation, with dismissal, with the silent contempt of neglect? Or do you see them as the emissaries of something holy, reminders of your own forgotten child, invitations to remember the fragility and beauty of existence? And how have you borne your suffering? Have you cursed it, rejected it, fled from it into distractions and bitterness? Or have you allowed it to carve you into something deeper, more open, more real? Your answers matter, not because of morality in the narrow sense, but because they reveal the posture of your soul toward the self. For the self, that great archetype, does not appear to you in lightning and grandeur. It appears as the broken, the needy, the moments of collapse. It appears in your dreams as the wounded animal, the neglected infant, the unbearable grief. It whispers, "See me here. Do not turn away." To refuse is to remain fractured. To accept is to step into wholeness. This is the secret path, hidden in plain sight, walked by prophets and mystics, by those who learn that God is found not in triumph, but in weakness, not in pleasure, but in the cross of suffering. And yet, do not misunderstand me. I do not glorify suffering for its own sake, nor do I sentimentalize weakness. I speak of them as revelations, as thresholds. They are the masks worn by the eternal. The powerless call forth your compassion, and in doing so, reveal whether your heart has grown narrow or wide. Suffering calls forth your courage, and in doing so, reveals whether your soul has aligned with truth. or fled into illusion, these are not punishments. They are mirrors, they are teachers, they are sacraments of the psyche. Imagine the world if people understood this. Imagine if nations were judged not by their wealth, but by how they treated their most powerless. Imagine if leaders were measured not by their rhetoric, but by how they endured their personal losses. Imagine if each of us, instead of presenting masks to one another, allowed our actions in these two arenas to speak for us. We would live in a different world, a world closer to wholeness. But such a world cannot be built on dreams alone. It begins in you, in the smallest gestures, in the way you live tomorrow morning, in the way you endure the next hardship that comes. Individuation is not theory, it is practice. Lived each day, often unseen, yet shaping eternity. Do not think you can escape this work. Life itself will press it upon you. You will meet the powerless. You will meet suffering. The only question is how you will respond. And each response shapes you. Each choice becomes part of your character, etched into the deep stone of your soul. There is no neutrality. To dismiss the weak is to harden your heart. To despise suffering is to shrink your soul. To honor the weak is to honor yourself. To embrace suffering is to step closer to the self. These are not abstract ideas, but living realities. They shape you, whether you will it or not. And so, I leave you with this challenge. Begin to see with the eyes that penetrate the mask, that look beyond the persona, that notice the quiet gestures that reveal truth. See yourself in the powerless. See your destiny in your suffering. And know that in both, the divine is whispering. Your character is not hidden in mysteries you cannot reach. It is revealed every day in these simple, profound encounters. To attend to them is to live consciously. To ignore them is to sleep in illusion. The alchemists knew this. They spoke of the opus contra naturam, the work against nature. It is against the ego's nature to honor the powerless. It is against the ego's nature to embrace suffering, but the soul's gold is refined precisely there, in the opposition, in the paradox. Out of base instincts, nobility is born. Out of despair, wisdom emerges. Out of the shadow, light is revealed. This is the eternal work, the path of individuation, the journey toward wholeness, and it is accessible to you, not in distant monasteries or lofty philosophies, but in the faces of those around you and in the trials of your own life. So I ask you, in closing, to remember the two torches I have given you. Carry them with you always. The torch of how a man treats the powerless, the torch of how he suffers. With these, you can see the true shape of any soul, including your own. Do not forget, for when all else fades, achievements, appearances, words, these two will remain as the silent testimony of your character. And when you stand before the mystery at the end of life, it will not ask you how clever you were, how admired, how successful. It will ask, did you see the powerless and honor them? Did you suffer and find meaning? Your answers will be your soul's true name. And so I bid you go forth, not with fear, but with courage, not with pride, but with humility, knowing that the self walks with you in every beggar, in every wound, in every tear. Live as one who sees, and in seeing, become whole.